At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is the Super NES podcast, episode number 257. I am Greg, joined always by Joe.
Hello.
And today we are looking at another conversion of a popular arcade game to the Super NES. This is common for it to happen during this time period. We're looking at the port of Sunset Riders, which was a very popular Western-themed run-and-gun shooting game from the early 90s. So, I did not play Sunset Riders as much in the arcade as other games of Konami, such as such as the Turtles or like X-Men, but I definitely remember playing it quite a lot and having fun with it. And I did play the Super NES version back when it came out originally, for the most part. Joe, I imagine you probably have some experience with this game, like the arcade too, as well, right?
So yeah, I have experience with the arcade version. This was definitely a staple at a local Chuck E. Cheese, alongside with, like as you said, the Turtle games, X-Men, and The Simpsons. Those are all fantastic Konami games, and this is very much the same.
Yeah.
I honestly have never played any of the home conversions. Okay. It's a game I've always wanted. I always wanted it for my Genesis. Never ended up getting it. And then, of course, my buddy had the Super Nintendo version, but we were always playing other games. I don't think we've ever played this together.
Interesting. Okay.
This was the first time really playing a home port of this game. I've only ever played the arcade version.
That's kind of a shame too, because with many games, this game really shines in two-player mode as opposed to just playing in single-player mode. But because the Super NES version, like most of the Super NES ports, only had two players, but at least it was something. But because as you may remember, Joe, or anybody who's old enough to remember the game when it first came out in the arcades back late 1991, there were two versions of the CAD made. There was a smaller two-player version where you could pick which of the four characters to play as, or there was also the deluxe four-player version where each character was assigned a spot, and you just played whatever character was that spot. X-Men did that also, I think, also with the small versus big options, and I think Turtles may also have been available in that format as well too.
Turtles and Simpsons were available like that. Yep.
Yep. So yeah. So I mostly remember seeing. I mostly remember seeing the two-player version because it took up a lot less space, and of course, floor space is always a premium in places like this back in the day. But yeah. So anyway, so yeah, this is just your pretty basic run and gun game. It has a lot of similarities to other games Konami already made at this time period. One of your compared it to being a cross between Contra and Vendetta. Vendetta is more of an obscure Konami game. It was available it was available as an arcade game at about the same time period. But I don't think that game ever got a home port. So most people kind of forgot that one existed. That was a beat 'em up game. So anyway, so basic gameplay is similar to other Konami games. Games this time period. You pick one of the four characters. You move from left to right. You shoot everything. You shoot everything up to try and shoot you. You have the ability to be able to hop. You have the ability to be able to jump up and down different floors and different buildings depending upon what's going on in the stage that you're in. And you are also then you are able to also do basic jumps as well too. The game consisted of an 8-way joystick and one button shooting, one button for jumping. So pretty simple controls. Not really a problem porting them over to the home ports then, because it ports as far as the control scheme goes, at least, because there wasn't really a lot of controls used for the game, like in arcades. So 8 stages to the game. 5 stages were traditional, the traditional foot that would move from left to right format I described, but they also spiced things up a little bit with 2 horseback stages, and also one having a moving train. There were a couple of bonus mini games that were available. Not really anything of a plot here for the game. It's just kind of like these 4 characters picked from bounty hunters, and you're trying to defeat wanted guys to like earn bounties basically. So it's just the characters picked from are Steve, who basically just has a dual wield revolvers. Who seems to powerful shots. He seems to be one of the strongest shot characters in the game. Billy has a revolver. Bob wields a rifle, and Kamano is a Mexican bounty hunter who also wields a shotgun. So one nice Easter egg like this game is that that he's active as one of the characters after defeating one of the bosses in the game. Like Rico, he grabs his sombrero with where's the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So cute little Easter egg, but typical quarter muncher. So it's still a pretty hard game for the home ports. But there are continue modes available to you, of course. About an hour long to play through the game. Options are pretty basic. You got 3 difficulty levels to pick from: easy, normal, hard. You can change up the control scheme for both players, and you can also you can also adjust how many players you start off the game with, and how many continues that you get. So there's nice flexibility here. As far as the controls go. So anyway, we both have experience with the home version of the game. So now that you finally played Super NES version, Joe, I'm curious to hear your thoughts as to how well you thought the game translated over to Super NES.
Yeah, I actually thought that this translated pretty damn well.
As is typical of Konami arcade ports. So,
yeah. So not only was I impressed that, they got just about everything that was in the arcade here at the home port. Obviously, sprites are smaller. There's not as much detail. That's really the biggest difference. But it shocked the hell out of me that they actually had the voice samples here in the game.
Yep.
And, having that first boss after he dies and he's like, bury me with my money. I was like, oh, the nostalgia. It took me by surprise. I really wasn't expecting to have the voice samples included in this. So yeah, very cool. I just wanted to point out one thing. Our heroes are essentially the same. There's not much difference between them. As you mentioned, the different characters have different weapons, and that's really where it varies.
It seems like Steve has stronger bullets than Billy. That's just my personal experience on gameplay, but I couldn't find anything online actually confirming that.
Yeah. So Billy kind of fires more from the hip, so it's less of an aim. Where Steve is more true in his shot. So it's not only that visually you can see that, but the hitbox and percentage of hitting an enemy is greater than what Billy would be because of Billy shooting from the hip. Also, to mention that Kermano, I think, is probably as most would probably describe him, the Donatello of the game. He does the most damage, but also he leaves himself open a lot for attack because of the fact that he has the shotguns. And I say shotguns because, if you're playing the game right and you're collecting the sheriff stars that you find, you should have dual shotguns before you even get to the end of the first level. And once you have those, it's rare that you're going to lose those dual shotguns, and it makes the game 1,000 times easier in my opinion.
Right.
One thing I did like, and I love this about the arcade too, is the fact that you do have those 2 planes where you can jump to the higher plane, which is cool. If you find doors, you can go inside doors. Those can open up. You can get stars, which will upgrade your weapon or do clean screen clearing effects, which was nice. What was the other thing? Oh, the slide. I love that here in the home port, you just hit the A button and you'll just do a slide. The sliding, I think, isn't a necessary move, but there is times, especially in some of the boss fights, where that's going to come in handy. All the bosses have some sort of barrier that you have to get down before you can actually attack them. So when you first encounter the boss, like prime example, first level, he's got a couple barrels in front of him. So he looks like he's exposed and you can just kind of shoot at him. But you quickly learn that it's those barrels that are in the way and they're taking the brunt of the action first. And then once those barrels fall off, then you can start actually hitting the boss. Yeah, with 3 lives and 3 continues, I don't think you'll have much of an issue beating this game. I beat it within an hour. I think I maybe had to continue once, maybe. And I'm not even 100% sure if I even continued. I did play I did play handheld on my Steam Deck, so and watching a movie with the wife. So I wasn't 100% invested. So that's what tells you like how much you can get away with this game, especially playing as Carmano. But yeah, I thought this was really good. I think the music and sound effects are on par with the arcade. As far as like, obviously they're not as crisp and clear, but as far as, 16-bit renditions, very good, very good. And like I said, it's got the digitized voice, which I was not expecting at all. That's the standout to me. Because back then, like anytime they digitized any sort of voice in a home console, it always baffled me. Like I always saw that as like an arcade premium thing. So seeing it either whether it's on the Genesis or on the Super Nintendo is always a treat.
Yeah, no, definitely I agree with you. I think the reason they included voice in this game as opposed to not including it in other games like Turtles is because that this game did not have as much voice as Turtles did. Yeah. So they were able to find the room, the cart to stick on the samples. And you have subtitles present in the game also for those too. So that can also help. I agree with you. The graphics are look very good. Konami always did excellent ports to arcade games. The big difference here is that they did have to censor the graphics somewhat because of because Nintendo standards at the time. For example, some of the women are more conservatively dressed. And now wearing like long dresses as opposed to what they had on before. Native Americans were taken out of the game and replaced by cowboys. Which also which has the biggest difference on gameplay because the Cowboys attack in a different pattern than the American than the Native Americans did. So that's the one stage where I feel that. And because the attack was changed, you no longer treat to spray your character being set on fire and burned to death.
Right.
which as much as I wish they hadn't had sanitized the game, I do understand that's how Nintendo did things back in those days. So it's like, okay, fine, like it is what it is. But music in this game was very good in an arcade game. Sounds just good here. The controls, like I said before, because the game didn't use many controls in the arcade version, it ports over very well. Very well here. I like very well here as well. So, though the arcade game came out in Japan first, the home ports never came out in Japan. Maybe because the game was not as popular in Japan, obviously, because it deals with the Old West as opposed to with North American popularity. But the Genesis version came out first in December of '92, and then released the Super NES version until October of '93. So, while the home ports have never been re-released, the arcade version was re-released for 360 back at 3X 360 back in the day, and you can currently buy that version as well nowadays if you want to. It's available for sale on the PS4, PS5, and also Switch. For $8 is the regular price. Though I'm sure that does go on sale every now and then. Typical sales that they have on these games. So these games are time period. But so having not played the Genesis version yourself, Joe, this might have the same impact. The same impact on you. I was hoping maybe that you had played that version, but. Genesis version of this game, much to my surprise, is very different compared to the Super NES version of the game. And I tried real hard to find out why this was. I could not find anything online stating definitively what happened to make the Genesis version of the game so different. My personal theory is twofold. One, the game was assigned to a different team inside Konami that maybe didn't have the technical expertise or experience working the system that some of their other internal teams did, because Konami could make excellent games for Genesis. They certainly knew how to program for the console, but which is why I'm saying I think maybe it's possible that for whatever reason this game was assigned a lower priority team and therefore, didn't quite get the same love and attention that, a brand new game for the system by them may have resulted in.
Right.
The other possible theory is that the Genesis, while being a very capable system in many ways, is Super NES, maybe there were hardware limitations that made the almost 100% translation of the game to the Super NES not possible with Genesis for one reason or another. So, but anyway, there are significant changes like Genesis version of the game. In a nutshell, only two characters are featured here. Billy and Commando are your choices, and they're also given surnames for some reason. Like as well too. They gave for some reason they added on to the two shooting buttons as opposed to one shooting button that the arcade and Super NES version had. One button allows the player to walk and shoot at the same time. The other shoot button allows the character to stay still when pushing it, which allows you just to aim your gun only. Similar to what you could do like Contra 3, if you remember that gimmick. So, I like this change. I think this. I think this is the only change for the positive. I think the Genesis version has. It's not as arcade faithful, sure, but it does certainly help in certain areas to try get the correct angle on somebody to blast them down. So. There are only 4 stages in this game as opposed to 8 stages. Instead, they did it like they combined two stages for the arcade game. Even like one long stage here in this version of the game. So, because the fact that that's only four stages. There's only 4 bosses instead. There's no voices in this version of the game. Power icons have been replaced. the player caused the dynamite stick to explode by shooting it, which again is no touch I actually like prefer.
Yeah.
Bonus stages are accessed a different way than they are like in the other version of the game. And you also and finally one of the changes Genesis version has put things for the positive. There's a 2-player versus mode in this version of the game as well too. We're basically just like the older it plays like the old arcade / Atari 2600 game Outlaw, where basically you're on one side of the screen, the part of the players on the other, and whoever defeats the other person out of their health first wins. Pretty much is how that works. So, and the graphics don't look as good. The music sounds more compressed. The controls don't feel as responsive. I don't, like I said, I couldn't find anything definitively online saying what happened here, but like I said, my best guess is like a rushed development cycle by an experienced team, combining limitations on the hardware. But it's really unfortunate. Mostly everybody agrees online the Super NES version of the game is far superior because of these reasons. Even though Genesis version did have a couple like small improvements to it.
So, if I remember correctly, Sunset Riders for the Genesis was basically hampered by the size of the RAM cart that they had available to them.
That can make sense, yeah. So.
Yeah.
But which I don't know, because Genesis games could be on carts as big as Super NES counterparts. So maybe Konami just didn't want to pay for the cost to use.
I think that might have been what it is, that they just didn't want to pay for the cost, and then realized, that poor sales or whatever, poor negative feedback, they realized, oh, well, we should probably take this and expand upon it for the SNES release, which is why it came out a year after the fact.
Yeah. Now that's not the Genesis version of the game is horrible. It's not. It plays very well, very well. And the game did, in that version of the game did review pretty well when it came out back then, back in 1992 as well. Also, it just didn't score as highly as the Super NES version of the game. So, and if you are looking for, the Super NES version of the game is more arcade faithful to the original arcade game than the Genesis version of the game is. I mean, nowadays, since you can buy the game, like I said, on Switch or PS5, you can get the arcade version of the game if you want it anyway. But at least for a long time, the Super NES version of the game was the more faithful version of the game for numerous reasons. So,
yeah.
So all in all, this is a fun game. Like I said, I think overall, I prefer the gameplay of games like X-Men and Turtles, because I think those games offer a little bit more depth and variety to them as opposed to this game does. However, this is still like a very fun Western themed, a shooting game. That's a shooting game that I think so. I think visual games, this type still holds up pretty well today.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally, I did love the sport, but at this time, this really comes down to, if you're a collector, get the cart, and I'm sure we'll talk about prices. I'm pretty sure that they're not too extreme, but they're going to be up there. But in my opinion, like, the arcade version is the way to go. Period. End of story. Nowadays with emulation, it is so easily to be able to play the arcade version that I can't recommend any home version.
Yeah, like I said, as long as you have modern system, the arcade version should be able to buy too. So, I agree with you. I mean, this is still a fun game. Fun games that's worth played. If you couldn't get the arcade version for whatever reason, you don't have a PS5 or Switch, the Super NES version of the game is still pretty good. Obviously nowadays, if you can get the arcade version of the game is the way to go for sure.
Yeah.
Despite the game being pretty popular, like I said, you never got a sequel or a sequel or anything like that. I guess the Konami felt that they had already done the formula had already been done to other games of this type already, so there wasn't really any kind of need to go back to it again. So, But and the and also Western themes are very popular video games anyway. Like Turtles, we already mentioned Turtles in Time has a Western themed stage in it. So it's like
the sequel that we should have got for this game did come out. It was rarely seen in arcades because I didn't know this game until after, long after it left the arcades. Before when I started like experiencing like MAME and stuff like that. But Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa is essentially
never heard of it.
it is essentially Sunset Riders 2. It just uses the characters from the cartoon Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa. It gives you 3 different characters to use to be able to go through and play through the levels, which are all like run and gun type levels, and it was released a year after Sunset Riders. So it's like they did make a Sunset Riders 2. They just slapped a IP onto it, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I never heard of that cartoon until now. I'm looking it up like real quick, and it actually, 1992. Well, I already was in high school and pretty much kind of out of cartoons by that point, which is probably why I never heard of it. But
I mean, I'll tell you, the cartoon's okay, whatever, but this arcade game is fantastic. So when I say it is a Sunset Riders sequel, it holds up just as good as Sunset Riders.
It's a pretty good list of voice actors who did some work for the cartoon too. It looks like, but
it's that early '90s. Everybody's trying to capitalize on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So
sure.
Mutant cows.
Right. Okay. Cool. I'll check the game out then. Thanks for the heads up. But so, anyways, mentioned before, the game did review very, very well, very well when it came out. Super NES version, like I said, got high marks, and its NES version got almost high marks. Just to give a few examples, EGM gave it 39 out of 50. Super Play gave it 87%. Super NES Force gave it 89%. So, definitely good marks across the game, and the game still was popular today. A lot of websites like IGN will rank the game in either their top 50 or top 100 games of the system, which just goes to show that it's still very it's still pretty popular and still thought of and still thought of well game today as well. But so anyway. Moving on to cheat codes and other stuff in this game, there is a fourth difficulty mode in this game that's hidden. The very hard difficulty mode, which is the hardest version of the game you can play, even harder than the arcade version of the game. Unfortunately, you cannot access it you cannot access it from the main menu. To unlock this, you have to play the game and beat it on hard first, and then the game will start over again automatically on very hard mode. So. There's no way, unfortunately, just jump straight to it. Yeah. I guess if you emulate the game, you could make a save state right there, and just use that save state whenever you want to play the very hard version of the game. But unfortunately, they should have at least put it. They should have at least made it accessible by a cheat code, as opposed to you having to force you to go through the game every time to unlock it. But but it is what it is. So, you are able to use a code to unlock additional players given to you and continues if you need it for whatever reason. The cheat code allows you to get up to 5 players and 5 continues for any different modes. That's nice. There is a stage select that you can use. A stage select code you can use. There's a sound test code you can use. You are also able to play the same character in a two-player game as well. Also, by doing a simple trick. So, And there's also and there's also like a way, kind of a bug. People found a very easy, foolproof way to defeat Richard Rose, the final boss of the game, without Professor Hasso. It's so easy. I have to imagine Konami would have patched it out of the game had they been aware of it, but.
Right.
Maybe they just didn't realize that it was possible to find this and to be able to beat this boss so easily. But yeah, there's a whole technique if you're doing this like online. If you struggle against the final boss for whatever reason, so good number of cheat codes here as you might expect for like a Konami game as well. But the game sold very well, and so. I don't know how many copies of the game were actually made. This is kind of early Super NES games. So I'm kind of thinking that because it was a popular Konami arcade game, the game did get made in a large amount. However, prices of this game are still pretty high. I guess probably, because of the popularity of this game, like even this day, it's still, still driving those high prices. The game can be found online fairly easily. 29 copies of the game listed on eBay as me doing this research recently. 106 copies of the game have recently sold. But these prices surprised me for how much they're going for. As always, these prices for North American copies only, and the prices include shipping. Card-only version of the game. Ranging from the low of $68 to all the way up to like $200 for car prices. So very expensive Super NES game. Wasn't expected to see for a game as popular as this was, but I guess the prices just goes to show how popular the game still is. CIB is also like pretty up there. Those prices range anywhere from $308 or $709. And I found 2 steel copies of the game that sold recently also. One beat up, kind of torn a little bit, sealed version of the game, $1,000. And a more professionally graded, boxed, very crisp looking steel copy of the game sold for a whopping $6,000 recently. So, high price across the board of this game. So yeah, definitely, unless you really want the Super NES version of the game for one reason or another, buying the arcade version of the game like online is definitely the way to go for like this game. Yeah. But yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised too to see how the pricing held up over the years.
Yeah, definitely get a modern version of it if you can.
Genesis version of the game, by the way, is not quite as it is pricey, but also not quite as expensive as expensive as this is. Yeah. So there is that too. But anyway, that's Sunset Riders in a nutshell. Not a very deep game. Just your typical fun, mindless, Western themed run and gun shooter game that. Still holds up pretty well today, I thought. So, it's definitely fun to go back to it. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the game, Joe? Let's wrap up here.
No, I think we've pretty much said everything that we can.
Okay. So, alrighty. So, first of all, I want to apologize like for the week-long delay in recording this episode. Both Joe and I were suffering from health issues that helped force us to delay recording this episode for a bit. And because of complications arising from those health issues, we're having to do an audible to our schedule a little bit as what games that we're doing next. So as usual, I'm only going to announce the next game to do. But I'm mentioning it here because we are changing up the next game that we're going to do. But we are going to have a special special guest host next time with us. I will not say who it is yet at this point. Just somebody who's been on the show before in the past. Talk about the very last Nintendo released Super NES game for the system, Kirby Dream Land 3. That is the full title of the game, right, Joe? I should have looked that before.
So.
Yeah. I obviously have not played this yet, but so 1997 for release like this game. So like I said, it was the last Nintendo release game of the system. And one of the last games to come out of the system, period, in the West. So we've covered Kirby games before in the past, but we haven't looked at this one yet. So So let's find out if let's find out if that late release date really means anything as far as the quality of gameplay.
Yeah, and it is Kirby's Dream Land 3, just like that. So, they hadn't come up with cute little subtitles they wanted to add in yet.
Like as I just said, I've not played this game yet. You've not played it yet either, Joe, right?
I have here and there, but this will be the first time I'm going to sit down and actually beat it.
Okay, all right. So for once you're better than me. You actually have some experience.
Yeah. I will say that it has kind of the same aesthetic as Super Mario World 2.
It looks based on screenshots.
So you will have that treat. I won't spoil anything else.
Well, Kirby games are usually pretty good, so I'm looking forward to digging into it. So, and of course, it's always fun to have guest hosts like this well too. So, but alrighty, folks. So look forward to that next time. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, whatever, feel free to send them our way. We have a Facebook group, or you can also send me an email directly if you want to the SNES podcast at yahoo.com. Joe, how can I reach you?
You can still reach me at my very public Facebook. Apparently, I have not pissed off enough people to have to privatize that. I also have a very public Twitter at JOESUX30. And then I also do the Radical Retro Roundup, which we've gone bi-monthly, so we'll be recording our second episode of the year here pretty soon. And we're going to be covering, Juiced. There we go. It's early 2000s racing game for the 360. It's going to be interesting.
Right. Okay, yeah. You've been teasing an episode for a while now, at least. So
we record this a lot more frequently than we do that show.
True. Yeah. But no worries. Yeah. You should be a good episode. So, all right. As always, thank you for giving us a few minutes of your day. Hope everybody out there stays safe, be well. We'll catch you again later next time. Bye, all.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.